Are you ready, kids?
Hello, it's Employee Emilian, and welcome back to SpongeComs. Today we're looking at Season 1, Episode 19, the penultimate episode of Season 1, Fools in April and Neptune Spatula, both of which aired on April 1st, 2000. And both of these episodes aren't anywhere near my favourites, but I do think that they're serviceable. They do represent two sides of the SpongeBob coin. One is a very simple episode, and one is a very adventurous episode. But let's see what happens when they do it in a very polarizing way. After all, to appreciate the good, you have to appreciate the bad. Fools in April was written by Aaron Springer, Eric Weiss, and Meriwether Williams, all very talented writers and had very much gotten their groove together by this point. So why is Fools in April such a polarizing episode? I have always wondered this, because my feelings on this episode have varied greatly over the time that I've been watching it, over the years. Sometimes I really like it, sometimes I really don't, and I think that it all has to do with its sense of humor, and that is very unfortunate to say for an episode based around April Fool's Day, which this episode claims is SpongeBob's favorite holiday, which, of course, he's a cartoon character in a comedy show. Why shouldn't it be his favorite holiday? But then we get Christmas up ahead, so I don't know. I guess this can count as maybe not them still trying to figure out SpongeBob's character, but giving him a personality trait that could have stuck but simply didn't, because there are only so many ways you can celebrate April Fool's Day with episodes. But for what it's worth, I understand why they made an April Fool's episode. It is a very good idea for one, because you get a lot of good jokes, and not just general good SpongeBob jokes like I just caught sight of the calendar. That's why Squidward's so sick. I do really like that gag, even though I sometimes forget what episode it's from. But you also get a lot of really good ammunition for general April Fool's Day humor, like practical jokes and stuff that kids can relate to, kids pulling pranks on each other on the schoolyard. And since SpongeBob has shades of workplace comedy, why don't we have practical jokes in the workplace that can show that you can still have fun as an adult on April Fool's Day? I think that the general idea for the first half of this episode is good. It is downright excellent for very early Season 1, but this is a lot later in Season 1. Not saying that it has to be flawless at this point, but the show had quickly evolved beyond very simple premises with very simple... Oh, and a fart joke, that's good. With very simple ideas and character dynamics. But I will say, this is my favorite part of the episode, SpongeBob just pranking everyone at the Krusty Krab, because you get a lot of really classic gags here with SpongeBob. Not really fooling anyone, well, he technically is fooling people, but it isn't about making them feel like idiots. It's sort of about giving them a laugh. And I can definitely see shades of squirrel jokes in this, where his sense of humor is funny to the audience, but not quite as funny to someone around him. Like in that case, it's Sandy, but in here, it's Squidward. And for what it's worth, SpongeBob's sense of humor in this episode, at least in the first half, is very much his essence. He's nice but annoying. A lot of these pranks are very nice pranks, as far as pranks go. And of course we get the classic up here that he puts in only one ice cube, and that gets... I keep on forgetting this guy's name. But the chocolate fish. It gets him to get a really good yell in for the first time. And this isn't something that they do often, but it is something that we associate with him. I guess because the design just suits it. So it's good to see a nice background character gimmick turn up in this episode. So if it gave us nothing else, it gave us that. And this is where things start to go downward, in my opinion. You just get a lot of SpongeBob laughing in this middle portion of the episode, and the jokes are weakening a bit, and I'm getting some Funny Pants vibes from it. I'm not saying this is as bad as Funny Pants. I don't even think Funny Pants is a bad episode, but yeah, it does sort of drain on you. And it gets you to root for Squidward, even though the rest of this episode portrays him as an unsympathetic narcissist. And I have to say that this episode is not the most likable portrayal of Squidward at all. Like, it's got the general setup and the general arc of a Squidward episode, only this time it's on April Fool's Day, so at this point they sort of broaden their definition of joke to just trolling characters. And I can definitely see this taking some people out of the episode, because this whole thing with the very elaborate practical joke that Squidward has pulled, this very elaborate, like, torture sequence. Like, I don't like using the term torture to describe slapstick and SpongeBob, but if nothing else, this is very, very intense slapstick for SpongeBob. And Squidward's just being gleeful throughout the whole thing, and I can see why this kind of sullies people's opinions of the episode. Because even though Squidward was annoyed, this is very much a new extreme that they don't really make him this mean in the pre-movie seasons all too often. And for a while here, you just get Squidward trying to apologize, and the thing is, he can't even pronounce the words sorry or apology or apologize, any of that sort of vocabulary. And I get it, and I do think that it leads to some alright faces, but after this, it would make you, like, not want to root for Squidward and not want to see what happens to him or to SpongeBob, because it's just gotten so bitter. However, I do think that after the scene in the Krusty Krab where Squidward goes over to SpongeBob's house and tries to apologize to him, really tries to find a way to get it off his chest, I think that's a first step, and that's slightly admirable. But for the most part, it still isn't very forgivable behavior. To some people, like, I think that he is certainly paying the price for his actions with all this stuff that he still has to go through. But yeah, I think that on top of the jokes getting a little bit funnier again, there are some creative obstructions for Squidward to face. And there is a goal, because he talks to Patrick here, and it really shows that SpongeBob's sadness has at least affected Patrick, at least affected other people. And I think this is the second time Patrick wears the Krusty Krab hat. The third time won't be in very long. Just saying. But yeah, about the faces Squidward makes, I think they're okay. Like, they're not the funniest faces ever. They're not the most well-earned faces ever either. But I totally get it. Even if it makes him gives him far less empathy. And of course, after this, it reaches its apex, where we get a quick little montage of Squidward trying to write down ways of saying that he's sorry to SpongeBob. And it's okay. I say that a lot in this episode, it's just okay. But talking from a hypothetical perspective of someone who really loves this episode, considers it one of their absolute favourites, and does kind of empathize with Squidward in this situation, I can definitely see it working as a way to learn empathy. Not saying that this episode is for narcissists, but I hope that you understand what I'm getting at. Like, not everyone is the best at apologizing, not everyone is the best at dealing with an annoying situation, especially on a holiday dedicated to annoying or fooling people in general. And I can totally get where Squidward's coming from, even if I don't agree with his actions. Oh, and that is quite the thin brown guy. And it's not the same fish that told him April Fool's joke at the Krusty Krab. Oh, and I think that's the first appearance of Squidward's family in any fashion. Of course, we almost see it getting like beaten into the car with a shovel in Krusty Towers, and SpongeBob and Patrick adopting themselves into Squidward's family in scavenger pants. But, slow beginnings. And I think that this episode does have a slightly fair ending, like ignoring the very downward middle period. I think that this is an okay resolution. Squidward admitting that he has this affection for SpongeBob and everyone, and them getting to hear it on April Fool's Day, no less. Like, it's not improving his mental state at all, but it's not the worst way to end the episode, and I think that's the nicest thing I can say. It's not the worst. Neptune's Spatula was written by Chuck Klein, Jay Lender, and David B. Fain. I guess he wanted to be credited with his middle initial today. Never see the Fry Cook Museum again after this, and this is a very off-model SpongeBob at points. Those are some very small eyes. What is this, season 8? But yeah, I do think that it was about time for SpongeBob to go to a museum. And a Fry Cook museum, no less. How convenient is that? Oh, and it's also good to see Larry here in this parody of Excalibur and the Legend of King Arthur. But it's about spatulas, so of course SpongeBob is somewhat interested in it. I think that's another strong draw of SpongeBob and its humor, because it would make far less sense for Excalibur to exist in SpongeBob's world. It is more funny to have a underwater or nautical or all-around silly parody of it, like in this case. Oh, and that woman's voice changed significantly. And here we get to one of the SpongeBob fans' most annoying aspects of the show, trying to guess which King Neptune is the canon one. Because this is the very first appearance of a King Neptune, and this one has like long flowing locks. He has hair, I'll say that. And he's voiced by John O'Hurley, I think his name is. I don't know if he's done any other particularly great roles, but suffice to say, he's the most tolerable King Neptune, honestly. I'll get to my thoughts on the second King Neptune when we get to the SpongeBob movie, which this episode has some similarities to, if you can believe it. Of course, Neptune is not one of those similarities. Like, this does get off to a sort of slow-ish start after Neptune appears, because he simply can't believe that SpongeBob, such a scrawny, primitive thing, can pull out the golden spatula. And I think that there is a game about this. Oh, of course there's, like, the golden spatula collectibles in the Heavy Iron SpongeBob games, but oh, I'm thinking of Legend of the Lost Spatula. That's the Game Boy game. Oh, and I also really like this Neptune and Larry kind of body slamming each other. If you have two muscly bros, why not do it? Patrick's role in this episode, yeah, it exists. I think that I don't hate it, but I don't love anything that Patrick says. Like, you do get some okay stuff, like Patrick just point blank showing the picture that he took. It's good that he had photo evidence. But SpongeBob is still good throughout all of this. Don't know why he has red and blue underwear on. Maybe he's just a massive Pokemaniac. God, these episodes are really taking me back to 2000 mentally. Oh, and also we get the famous wallet visual. Don't know why that caught on, but it is a very funny face he makes. It's one of optimistic hopelessness, I'd want to say. Patrick getting burnt and also fighting with King Neptune over how many challenges SpongeBob can do just reminds me of two better jokes from two later installments in the series. That being Squidward getting blasted by the Flying Dutchman. Keep confusing him with the Simpsons character. But yeah, him getting burnt by the Flying Dutchman in Shanghai, and also him fighting with the other King Neptune in the first SpongeBob movie. This is a joke that they later reuse, and it's much snappier and much funnier there. And I don't know why Patrick is reincarnated as a pair of pants on an inanimate starfish. Funny visual, I guess, but yeah. Oh, and this is also the first time that we get to see Atlantis on the show. Unfortunately, will not be the last. But this version of Atlantis is okay. Like, you don't get a good view of it, but it does its job as seeming like this luxurious place. Like, it looks like a retirement home postcard. And I think that's the thing they're going for. Oh, and also you have Tom Kenny in the shower. You can't be a late season 1 episode without Tom Kenny in the shower. I mean, you can be, you just won't be Suds or Neptune Spatula. As I was saying, this interpretation of Atlantis is okay. I keep using that word a lot again, but that's because these episodes, I can watch them, but I won't gain much from them. If you want my overall consensus on these episodes, then voila, you got them early. I think my biggest issue with this episode is that only now, near the end of the second act, we're getting to the main point of the episode, this big challenge between Neptune and SpongeBob, and we get the Poseidon. I think that's okay. That's pretty clever, getting both Neptune and Poseidon's names in there. They're both the gods of water, and, well, priorities. They had to pick the Roman one, I guess. I'm not too good with ancient mythologies, but I do get that there is some, like, naming disparity between them. And the Poseidon appears 6 minutes in, and it is the most exciting part of the episode. It's the part that I think of the most when this episode comes to mind, and it's basically only the climax. It's only the third act. Because the first 2/3 of this episode, or, well, a bit over the first half, is just SpongeBob and uncovering the golden spatula, and Neptune arguing that he isn't the royal fry cook. He isn't royal enough to scrub the tail fin. But yeah, I think I am pretty bummed because this cook-off is my favorite part of the episode. You just get a lot of great contrast between Neptune's god-like powers, well, he is a god in some way, and SpongeBob just being a lowly fry cook. Really shows Neptune trying to be the center of attention and disprove SpongeBob's, like, talent for fry cookery, because this is what it's all about, and we don't even see the Krusty Krab until the very, very end. So by this point, it kind of expects you to know that SpongeBob's a fry cook, and I think that's alright. I think that's fine. Like, most kids would by that point, even the younger and less cognitive ones. And just like that, the cook-off is over, and we're back to arguing. See why this isn't a super popular episode? Like, it's one that people remember, but isn't something that people adore. Like, I think John O'Hurley gives a pretty good performance, but Neptune has never really been a super three-dimensional character, even for SpongeBob. But above all else, I do think that the message is something that is gonna be something that people remember, even if they're not super keen on the episode. The message of quality over quantity. Because Neptune makes 1,000 patties, all of them terrible. SpongeBob only makes one, but it's the best thing ever. I don't know if there are any other episodes off the top of my head that deal with this sort of conflict. And that's a very nice gross out gag. Like, it's more about the reaction than the thing, and the thing isn't even mostly visible. I think that's good. Oh, and we also get SpongeBob almost saying goodbye to everyone he knows, even though Patrick and Mr. Krabs and Larry, I guess, are the only ones seen. And this leads into probably the biggest legacy of this episode. The question of, did SpongeBob keep his godhood after Neptune zapped him? Because this came out in some, entertainment articles a couple years ago. This fan theory started floating around that because SpongeBob gets, zanier and loonier, the show gets, zanier and loonier after this, with episodes like Bubble Buddy and Frankendoodle, where SpongeBob outright creates life, that SpongeBob has essentially become a god, has godlike powers now. And that sort of thing is inconclusive as far as SpongeBob goes, because you just really don't have much to go off of. There isn't any consistent lore to the show. I mean, they have 2 Neptunes, for goodness sake. Oh, and that's okay that they have SpongeBob, using his, super action voice during his godlike state. I think that works out. So anyway, as I was saying about SpongeBob's godhood, it's inconclusive. I don't know. But overall, I think this episode as a whole is just one big I don't know. And funny thing about both these episodes is that Fools in April starts off very chipper and optimistic, but then comes sort of down into normalcy, while Neptune Spatula is just very average for the first major block, and then it gets more adventurous as it goes on. So, my question of the week for you this week is, do you prefer adventurous SpongeBob episodes or slice of life episodes? SpongeBob runs the whole gambit of emotions for a kids show, and I want to know what you think fits it best. Personally, I like me some adventure, but slice of life can be funnier on occasion. Let me know what you think. Last week's question was, what is the cutest SpongeBob moment? Super Seal says probably the whole of Plankton's pet is the cutest. Jack McGinn says the friendship rings from the secret box. And Michael Eurismia says probably Driven to Tears' ending. I really can't pick. You guys did alright for a couple of goofballs. Goodbye for now.